Hello, I'm Maria Hall Brown. Thank you for joining us for DACA in Los Angeles. In 1983, the Central American Resource Center was created to assure political asylum for refugees escaping persecution. Well, a lot has happened with CARECEN since then, but absolutely there is one person here that can help us explain how they will help people working with DACA. And that is Federico Cantón, the staff attorney. Nice to have you with us. Thanks so much for being here.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Well, obviously DACA is in the news because of a Supreme Court decision that was currently made. Perhaps at the very beginning you can explain what DACA is and what the Supreme Court decision was.
Sure, of course. Back in 2012, the Obama administration put into place Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, or DACA as it is more generally known. And what it does is for individuals who came into the U.S. as unlawfully as minors, they are given 2 years of protection from removal, as well as given a 2-year work permit that they can renew. And also, when they first apply, they get access to a social security number. So yes, that went into effect in 2012, and a lot of people applied, and they've been renewing ever since. But in 2017, the Trump administration announced a rescission for DACA. They wanted to get rid of it completely, but many organizations challenged that rescission, and it has been fought for years, and it went all the way to the Supreme Court. And just last Thursday, June 18th, the Supreme Court delivered their decision saying that the reasons given by the administration did not comply with the Administrative Procedures Act. So, excuse me. Because the reasons were given were inadequate, then now DACA is back in effect as it was in 2012.
So there's an interesting history here, because I know that President Obama put DACA into place as sort of a replacement for the DREAM Act for Dreamers, which was a conduit for citizenship for unlawful entry as a minor, an opportunity. So this doesn't necessarily, DACA doesn't lead necessarily to citizenship. It's really just an opportunity to work, get educated, and to stay, correct?
Correct. DACA itself, if a person has DACA, it by itself does not in the future give them access to or a pathway to citizenship. A person with DACA may be able to obtain citizenship, but it would have to be through other means, for instance, like a petition by a U.S. citizen spouse. But by itself, DACA does not allow someone to obtain citizenship.
And how often does the DACA need to be renewed?
Every 2 years.
Every 2 years.
Correct.
Okay, so now you have how many people that are considered in DACA?
Oh, hundreds of thousands. I believe it's around 600,000.
Okay, so 600,000 people are relying on DACA to be able to stay in the United States, to pursue education, to get a work permit, and potentially, if things change in the future, seek an immigration status.
Correct. And as you mentioned, that now that there are around 600 people that have relied on it for working, seeking an education, those are parts of the factors that the Supreme Court said that the administration didn't even consider when it chose to try to rescind DACA. So the Supreme Court let the administration know that people have relied on this, not just the individuals, their families, people have bought homes, even large corporations, they employ individuals with DACA. So because that was not accounted for at all in the administration's decision to rescind it, it was inadequate, and that's partially why the rescission was struck down.
Okay, but the way the Supreme Court worded it, it was literally how DACA was trying to be removed, and not the fact that DACA was, that the president did have the right to eliminate DACA. It was just the procedure in which he did. So where does that leave DACA right now? I mean, could it be challenged? Could it be changed? Could it be, could something get into the courts again?
You are absolutely right. Right now it's in a very, well, I'd say a tenuous spot because the Supreme Court did say that, yes, if appropriate enough reason is given, then DACA could be taken away. So right now, as of last Thursday, the USCIS has not issued any guidance on how it plans to proceed with DACA. So for now, as best as we know, we're operating as DACA was in 2012. But that does not mean that today, next week, next month, the administration could try once again to repeal or rescind it, but this time following the roadmap that the Supreme Court gave.
But we can kind of look at it in terms of time. I mean, if President Trump made this order in 2017, and here we now are in 2020, the road into the courtroom is a long, windy, and sometimes very slow one, is it not?
Correct. And which, if another rescission is announced, I personally don't doubt that it too would be challenged, regardless of the reasoning given. And cases like these, as you mentioned, they take years, undoubtedly. So depending on what happens in November, the future is still uncertain of what ultimately the fate of DACA will be.
So what did the court case actually do for those that are in DACA? I mean, what kind of assurances did it provide? What kind of things opened up again? Are people able to apply, renew? I mean, what can you do if you are in DACA, in particular in Los Angeles, in particular with the services that CARECEN offers? So
certainly. Well, following the rescission, no worries. Following the rescission in 2017, there was an injunction put into place that made it so that people could only renew if they had previously held DACA.
Okay.
Following the rescission, people could not apply for the first time or apply for advanced parole if they had DACA.
Okay.
So now, as of last Thursday, we believe that we are operating in the situation as it was in 2012, meaning that once again, people, if they've never held DACA, they can once again file their initial applications. People can continue renewing DACA if they've had it, and people can once again apply for advanced parole.
Okay. So how is that process? Is it laborious? Is it easy? Obviously, you're there to help, but there's very specific things that have to happen. So what are the rules? You kind of explained it at the beginning what a DACA was, but what are the rules to be eligible for DACA?
Okay. The basic eligibility requirements for DACA are that the person needs to have arrived in the U.S. before they turned 16. The person needs to have been under 31 as of June 15th, 2012.
Okay.
And they also need to have been present in the U.S. on June 15th, 2012 without lawful status. And they need to demonstrate that they have been living continuously present in the United States as of June 15th, 2007, which is 13 years from now. And beyond that, they need to demonstrate that they have either, they are in school, either high school, they've graduated high school, they have obtained a GED, or are in the process of obtaining a GED, or they have been honorably discharged as a veteran. And in addition to that, they need to demonstrate that they are not a national security risk or a threat to public safety. You cannot have been convicted of a felony or a serious misdemeanor, for example, DUI, or you cannot have been convicted of 3 or more misdemeanors. And in addition, if someone has to be over 15 to apply, unless they have been previously in removal or deportation proceedings or have been given an order for voluntary departure. So, yes, there's a lot of evidence you have to gather in order to be able to apply. You need your proof of identity, proof that you satisfy the educational requirement. But perhaps the most daunting factor is, excuse me, is showing that you have been physically present in the U.S. for these past 13 years. You need proof with your name, with your address, and a date showing that you've, since June 15, 2007, you've
consistently been here.
Correct.
You've not been out of the country for a period of time at all, or a period of time that is restrictive.
Correct.
Okay. So if in fact you're renewing DACA now, well, first of all, let me ask a question about someone who is applying for the first time. So the applications in theory are going to go through because of the Supreme Court ruling. We're going to start over again. What happens if your application is denied? Are you then automatically set up to be deported?
Well, first of all, before anybody applies, we always recommend that they seek advice, a legal advice from like either a licensed attorney or an accredited representative, just to help them really get an idea of their risks in applying, especially if they have past contact with immigration or a criminal history. But there are always risks involved, not just for people that are applying initially, but for renewals as well. For instance, like as I've explained before, the future is uncertain. It's possible that while someone applies and while the application is pending, the DACA is once again rescinded, or there's an attempt to try to rescind it. It's possible that USCIS will issue some guidance, perhaps adding some more restrictions on applying. It's very difficult to say. But as far as, say, someone applies and it is denied for some reason, the Trump administration has indeed expanded the categories of applications that are placed in removal proceedings if denied. But fortunately for DACA, if that is specifically exempted from that policy. So if someone's DACA application is denied, there's a very low chance that they will be placed in removal proceedings. But of course, that analysis changes depending on if the person has some substantial criminal history or contact with immigration. That's why, once again, we always recommend to seek like legal advice before submitting any kind of application.
So those that are renewing, there are a number of reasons to renew. Obviously, they're already in the system. It behooves them to stay in the system if, they still have the work permit, the Social Security card, the opportunity to gain education, et cetera. Is there any danger for someone renewing over and above? Are they also put into the system in regards to potential deportation, or is it better to renew if in fact you're eligible to renew right now?
If we recommend that if someone is eligible to renew, that they definitely renew once again. They are subject to the same uncertainties. Well, like we don't know how long DACA is going to be in effect. It's possible that it'll stay for a long time, but we don't know if another attempt might be made to rescind it. But even for renewals, we recommend that they seek legal advice just to see if anything has changed since their previous renewals, any contact with the police, just to get a real good analysis of their situation before renewing. But for renewals as well, if they are denied and they don't have any substantial criminal history or contact with immigration, then there should be a very low risk of them being placed into removal proceedings.
Are you the legal advice? Or are you offering services that help them get that legal advice? So what are the things that your office can do?
Oh, we definitely, going to carecen-la.org/DACA, people can go there. We have a link there so that people can schedule appointments. We're doing everything remotely over the phone. we can screen individuals for renewals or also initial applications now. They can go to that site, click the link, and set up an appointment in the future. And yeah, we'll conduct a full intake interview over the phone and screen them for DACA, either their renewal or their initial application, and simultaneously screen for any additional forms of relief that that individual might have.
Okay, so if you're applying for the first time, you have to have been in the United States the entire time. But those that have been part of the DACA program, there are opportunities for them to travel, to leave. And so how is that right now? Is that a tenuous situation, or is that something that they can apply for? And there's a very specific term in regards to
Advanced parole.
There you go.
Yes. Advanced parole was also taken off the table after the attempt at rescission, but we're assuming that as of last Thursday, it is back on the table. And what advanced parole is for someone that has either a humanitarian or a professional or educational reason to travel abroad. They can apply and seek permission from DHS to do so. If they are approved, then they can travel, return, and by returning, they're considered to have a legal entry into the United States. And that legal entry can make future processes with immigration, like applying for residency, easier than if you hadn't. So, as I mentioned, we believe that that is back on the table, but there are several considerations that people might make before choosing to apply. Once again, we recommend seeking legal counsel, but for instance, just it's discretionary, and once again, USCIS has not yet issued any guidance with advanced parole or initial applications, so it's possible that they might issue guidance in the future, taking it off the table. But beyond these considerations, there's also the much broader consideration of traveling in the current pandemic.
Sure.
Yeah, you could travel abroad, and then something happens while you're out there, like a spike, and that makes
Difficult to get back.
Exactly.
And we should also qualify that there have to be specific and legitimate reasons for you to travel.
Yes.
You know, as you mentioned, education, humanitarian, employment. You just can't go on a nice little vacay.
No, definitely not. And once again, with legal advice, we can help people see whether or not that is an option for them.
So this didn't solve a problem necessarily. It kind of put a Band-Aid on, the issue of minors unlawfully here wanting to stay and be productive citizens. But there is a track record now of people who have been under the DACA program. And from your vantage point, how do you see those that have participated? Have they been, because one of the concerns with immigration is that those that come into the country are taking advantage versus participating and offering something broader and bolder and better to the country at large. So what have you seen the DACA participants? Have they become educated? Have they been good citizens? Have they actually been good employees, et cetera? What have you been able to observe from your vantage point? What's the misnomer about people who are doing this? What are some of the misconceptions, and who are they really?
Well, a lot of people call them dreamers, and I don't think that's a misnomer, because I think that accurately represents that these are people that just want, that are dreaming to be all they can be and to be productive members of the U.S. Like even me personally, I am a DACA beneficiary, and without it, I wouldn't be able to be where I am today as an attorney. So, and I see it every day. A lot of our clients, they are people that just want to be productive members of the society, help other people. So I think dreamers is a good word for them. I can't think of any actual misnomers for them.
Sure.
But
Well, I was going to say because there's a lot of work to be part of DACA. It's not something that is just automatically given. You know, paying taxes, working, staying employed, staying out of the judicial system, et cetera. So, you know, the 600,000 people that are currently part of DACA do you consider them assets to the United States?
Definitely. Definitely. I mean, you have people with DACA working in the medical field right now, you know, putting their lives at risk. Beyond that, we have people with DACA that are job creators, definitely.
That was part of the argument, was it not, in front of the Supreme Court, that eliminating all of these people was going to actually be somewhat catastrophic to the industries that are incredibly in crisis right now?
Correct. And that is something that the Supreme Court said needs to be addressed, and if they want to properly try to rescind it once again.
So what did it feel like for you when you heard the Supreme Court decision? Because, you know, it's no mean feat to be an attorney. I don't care whether you're a citizen or not. It's just a difficult road. So how did you feel when there was not an answer, but a little bit of a reprieve?
Well, that day, like just building up to the decision day, I had been watching any day that I saw that the Supreme Court was going to be issuing decisions, and at 7 in the morning I was just refreshing the Supreme Court website, just trying to see if the decision came out. So it was very anxious couple of weeks up until last Thursday.
Because what would have happened? What if it had gone the other way? What would have legitimately happened to 600,000 people across the country? What would have happened? You would have just waited for someone to knock on the door and say, you have to go now?
Well, first of all, I don't think it would have been something that's like the next day it's gone. Mm-hmm. We believe that there would have been some kind of winding down of DACA. It's really difficult to know, and fortunately, it's not something that we have to think about right now.
That's very true. Well, given the fact that you are an authority in this regard, and given the fact that you are in a position to help people, what can your office do? What can you offer people, and what do you suggest to people right now? What is the most important message that you want to get out to people in Los Angeles that are under the DACA umbrella? Do you want them to come in? Do you want them to renew? What are the things that you think are critical at this very moment?
Yes, definitely. If you currently have it, renew. If you think you might be eligible, set up a consultation, and we can evaluate your particular situation to see whether or not you should apply for the first time. So yes, definitely seek out that legal counsel specifically, because I believe it has been a huge asset in my life and for many people's lives. So yes, go on to our website, carecen-la.org/DACA.
Yeah. Are there fees?
Oh, yes.
Are there multiple languages? I mean, what are the barriers and how are they addressed?
Well, in our office specifically, you can file the application. The application is always in English, but you can have a translator help you and a preparer fill out the application. There are fees. It costs $495 to actually submit the application with USCIS.
Does your office charge? Or is it a sliding scale based on the ability to pay?
Yes, depending on, I believe it's if someone's household is under 250% of the federal poverty guidelines. Mm-hmm. We do not charge for the service, but if it is above that, we do offer consultations through LAPL that would not be subject to our fees.
Well, that's good. Okay, so renew, definitely. Apply for the first time, knowing all of the parameters. Get in touch with the office. The office can answer questions. There's a fee to become DACA that is not yours, it's just the government's fee? And have I missed anything? Is there anything, if people are not DACA but just want to learn about the program and get practical, factual information versus, you know, somebody randomly saying something or somebody giving them misinformation, that's available as well?
Yes, at the CARECEN-la.org/DACA, we have a little frequently asked questions bit there and explaining the Supreme Court decision. So definitely. Yes.
And there are a lot of other services that,
Oh, of course.
I mean, beyond DACA, this organization, as I said, had been around since 1983, so there's a lot of different services.
Of course. The DACA team is just one small team of this larger organization. We help people apply for naturalization, apply for U visas, TPS, most things under the Immigration Sun.
And there's also, I noticed, opportunities for work. There's a day labor sort of opportunity there too.
Yes, we also have a day labor center, which unfortunately I'm not really that familiar with. But
you got a lot of work to do in your office. I'm not saying you need to work in another office. I was just surprised at, you know, the scope and the scale, you know, starting from a very specific population and how much it's grown over the years to encompass everything else.
No, definitely.
Okay. So how was law school? Was it scary?
No.
No?
No, I didn't find it that bad.
So do you have confidence in the justice system? Do you feel that the Supreme Court did the right thing in this particular instance?
Yes, I do have ultimately just confidence in the justice system, and I'm a little biased, but I feel like they did the right thing here. Yeah, happy with the decision. We were very fearful that it might have been gone way differently.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're here.
Thank you.
And I'm glad that you're there to share very important and pertinent information. So I really appreciate your time, and I appreciate all of your insight.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Federico. All right, well, if you have any questions, please feel free to log on. I'm sure everyone at the office really, really wants to help, and I appreciate Federico's time. I'm Maria Hall-Brown. Thanks for joining us.